I think it was a bit of a relief having had done some coverage on politics in 2016. I was a little bit ready to do something different, but in an interesting way. I mean, yes, no. What is a relief is that life and death is not coming into your storytelling in that same way. But I think the challenge also is sort of similar, right? Because you can also tell a sort of a war story and just hit the surface of it, the bang bang of all of it. But to tell a war story well, a conflict story well, you're diving deeper and figuring out what is relatable, what's on that human level. It's not just about the bang bang and the bombs. It's about the humans and
Of
what they're
course.
through. And I think the same sort of skill set applies in a way. I mean, that might sound silly. I'm not downplaying the conflict, but just in terms of wanting to get past that first level of what you see as a visual and being able to tell the human story of what happened beneath that. I think those things are sort of there. It's a similar skill set, and you're sort of asking similar questions about what drives people and what keeps people going. It is certainly easier, I think, to go to sleep when you're watching this kind of footage rather than
Yeah.
the last big film I did was on COVID, and this is easier footage to watch.
Right. For sure. Juan, do you want to add something to that?
No, I think exactly the same as Jenna. I think once you have been in all these kind of dark places sometimes, like coming to a situation where there's more about light and a completely different situation, it's a relief, and it was just fun and a great year to spend watching Messi. He's an amazing human, so it's like kind of inspiring. And those are the things, like when you are working in this kind of stuff, you are so involved with it that of course it gets to you. And if you're in a war situation, it gets to you. And in this case, being so close to Messi and his story and such an inspiring situation, I think it was just nice, good input, for our life in a way.
That's great. So when I was watching Messi's World Cup Rise of the Legend, um, I was trying to figure out as a storyteller myself that how much of the footage or interviews were after, the World Cup and how much was during or before. So obviously there was broadcasting footage and all that. There was some cell phone footage that I noticed. Can you just sort of tell me about it? Like, were you guys always planning to do this before the World Cup began, or was that sort of in the middle of it or the end? Just tell me the process of that. And both of you or any one of you guys can start.
Well, I mean, we were very, very lucky that we get the chance to have Leo before going to the World Cup. We had two main interviews, one before and one after, which was great because the one before gave us the chance to feel his expectations and the emotion going towards the World Cup. And then you could figure out, his state of mind and emotions before going into this adventure, which I think was very important for the film to have like this as a setup also for jumping into this adventure. And then to be able to and then that was actually the only interview that we did before the World Cup. And then all the rest interviews and then a second interview with Leo were done after the World Cup was already passed. And then we were able to, to reflect on everything that has happened. And then we were also able to identify, which were the segments of the story that we wanted to, concentrate more. So we were able to actually build the story better afterwards, once the whole adventure was passed.
Got it. Jenna, you want to add something to that?
And then while we got this unprecedented access to actually being with Messi in the Argentinian compound throughout this World Cup period. And that is, different teams are different, but the Argentinian compound particularly was extremely secure for all sorts of reasons. One, obviously, the first one being their safety, health, and security. And focus, right? This is also, there's still COVID fears. So they had extreme protocols around their compound and around protecting Leo and his players so that they could be single-minded in their focus. And then we had this incredible access, but we really had to walk that fine line as filmmakers of getting in as close as we could, but not in any way becoming part of the story or affecting the outcome of the story, becoming a distraction, because that's the worst thing you can do. So we had to have a really light touch, really fly on the wall, have them become comfortable with the camera and be able to observe. And since they won, we sort of feel like we didn't mess it up. That's where our light touch worked.
Right. You know, it must be interesting when you're following. Okay, so when I was watching the series, I was wondering, obviously nobody knew that Argentina was going to win, right? Like as fans or as storyteller, you're trying to, as fans you want them to win, as storytellers you want to tell a great story. And I was thinking to myself, what are the odds of, you know, Argentina winning while you're winning the World Cup while you're telling the story or doing this process? And if there were other teams that were being followed by other you know, producers and stuff. And so when you were watching experiencing the series as it was going on, what was that process like? Did you were you excited about their journey and you know, just that level of, from the standpoint of selfish standpoint of being filmmakers, like how do you want this to turn out for your own films, both of you, aside from Messi and Argentina and all that?
I mean, it was obviously it was a bit of a bet going in, right? We had no idea. You never know what's going to happen in sports.
Yeah.
They obviously had a very good chance, 36 undefeated 36 game winning streak,
Yeah.
and going in, and they were, you know, sort of one of the favorites. And then their first game against Saudi Arabia, and it was like, well, that was an unexpected for everyone around the world. But, you know, I think one of the most interesting sort of moments in the 4-week period, the sort of A story for us, is watching them recover from that and watching who Messi was during that period as a leader. And, you know, watching them sort of come together and the trajectory of that team gelling around him and with him over the next few weeks to win it, because they were a very different team at the end than they were at the beginning. So I think despite the moments of fear of what's going to happen next, we thought, you know, okay, this is manna from heaven. This is amazing. This story couldn't be any better. We have this dramatic turn and we have the perfect ending.
Well said. Juan?
No, it's exactly as Jenna said, you know, it's like a huge bet. It was, I mean, the rise of a legend also means, you know, that we are filming and we're telling the story of his whole trajectory. So it wasn't about winning the World Cup, the film, the
Yeah.
series, more about the 20-year experience with Argentina and his relationships and the ups and downs. So we knew that that was the project we were doing, but of course, having the, you know, the ending that we had is just a miracle and you know, fantastic for the project.
Yeah, it was icing on the cake. For me, the most pivotal thing that I from looking at it from an audience standpoint, obviously, you know, from an outsider, before watching this documentary, everybody would say that, you know, the fact that they lost to Saudi Arabia, you know, kind of made them wake up and push themselves further, 100%. But after watching the series, I think the part that really I feel that this is nothing to take away from Messi and his teammates and their coaching staff and everything, but in terms of what pushed them really, not necessarily the loss of Saudi Arabia, but that little speech that Saudi Arabia's coach Harvey Renard, I think his name is, made in the intermission, sorry, that how, you know, you want to take a selfie with Messi, like he really pushed them, and that's the reason Saudi won. And then everything else sort of happened after that. Would you agree to that? Because I thought that was the most pivotal moment in their victory as well as in the documentary.
Well, I think one of the things that, I mean, obviously Team Argentina wasn't hearing that speech at the time, but I
Right.
think, but for the turn, it says so much, right? Is that
Yeah.
Messi was, all these players did go in thinking Messi was a god when he walked into the first game, not just to his own players, but to all the other players, right? And so the expectation around him and sort of the deference that I think that scene showed, the deference that a lot of players had, even if they didn't mean to. And everyone around being like, no, it's on. Like right now, he is just an opponent we need to beat. And it really has this sort of like jolt of energy. And you're like, okay, right, anything can happen in sports. Messi hasn't accomplished this thing yet. He's very accomplished, but he's got to climb this mountain just like everybody else. And that makes for a great story.